Now, it's been pretty tough at the top of the Liberal Democrats over the last couple of weeks. A dismal performance in the European elections, and then the small matter of that rather clumsy plot to dump Nick Clegg. Then up pops Lord Rennard again. This time he's expressing regret that he may have intruded upon the personal space of 4 women working at the party, 3 of whom want him to be kicked out of it. Where does that leave the Lib Dems' appeal to women voters? There are only 7 female Lib Dem MPs at Westminster right now. In fact, one, Jo Swinson, is on maternity leave. The other 6 were not available to come on Woman's Hour this morning. We did ask. We also asked Lord Rennard. He wasn't available either, but he does give us this statement. Lord Rennard has not given any interviews. He believes that the decisions of the Metropolitan Police and the independent QC, that's the man who's led the party's internal inquiry, should be respected. After lengthy consideration of the evidence, they both concluded there should be no further action, which means that there was insufficient evidence for a trial or for a disciplinary hearing. That's the statement we've had from Lord Rennard's representatives this morning. Well, let's talk to Bridget Harris, one of the women involved, and at the time a special advisor to the Lib Dems in Wales, wasn't it, Bridget?
Yes.
This is in 2003.
That's right, yes.
When the incident with Lord Rennard occurred. And Miranda Green is here, the former party press secretary, now a journalist. Miranda, welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Bridget, I know that it's been difficult for you going through this experience, but take us, if you can, back to 2003, who you were, who he was, and very briefly, what occurred.
Thank you. I had just moved. I'd been in Wales for the last 6 months, having spent a couple of years working in Westminster, very much inside the usual channels in the Whip's office, and I was head of an MP's office. So I was quite well versed in the Westminster culture and the way MPs operated there. So actually, to be honest, it was a bit of a breath of fresh air going to Wales because of the new Assembly.
So you were in a bar, and Lord Rennard, who was then what exactly?
So he was the chief executive. He was the visiting chief executive of the party, and I was, the last person in the bar to keep him company, if you like, at party conference. And in the midst of what I thought was a perfectly professional and political networking kind of chat, the kind of thing that you do where you think that you're advancing your networking, his hand started to creep over my legs, and then he propositioned me.
He has apologised, and that would seem to be enough for many people, but not for you?
Well, on a personal level, of course, I welcome his apology. And at the time I did complain to the party and hoped that the party would take forward an investigation, but they didn't do so. What became clear after a number of years is that many women had also complained about his behaviour. And I think that there was a pattern emerging, which is it wasn't just the actual physical hand on the knee or other intrusions. It was the abuse of power that he was taking advantage of. He was the most important person in the party, and he had huge leverage over a lot of these women, many of whom wanted to become MPs, were investing a lot of their personal life and money into their careers. And so to have such an important guy, proposition them, puts them into a hugely difficult position and makes it very, very difficult.
Miranda, do you understand Bridget's feelings on this one?
I can understand, unfortunately, why this has not been dealt with earlier and why it's turned into a saga, and I think that's for a couple of reasons. One is that the Liberal Democrat Party has a ridiculous rule, which is that in these cases, these sorts of complaints, you have to reach a criminal standard of proof before the matter can be resolved, which is obviously absurd in this sort of case. And secondly, I think that these sort of workplace harassment issues, it seems to me there is no point of compromise on either side of this dispute now, and I don't know how it gets resolved, because I can totally understand why the complainants want to keep on. In workplace harassment cases, traditionally, what happens is that the complainant in some way gets edged out, and then the last man standing wins, and that's often the person against whom the complaint is made. And so I can completely understand this. I'm very sad that Bridget has actually left politics now, because what I worry about with this case is that it's yet another story which makes women in the outside world, women in ordinary life, think that politics is not for them, because in some way it is actively a dangerous place to be if you're a young woman.
That isn't the message you want to send, is it, Bridget? Because I know you're passionate about the involvement involvement of young women, particularly in politics.
Oh, I am, and I've done huge amounts of work actually on a voluntary basis for charities like Uprising, and I've done lots of work in the past running programmes like the Next Generation programme for young councillors in local government. And I think there's huge potential for young people to get involved with politics.
But some people would say, Bridget, that by carrying on this particular discussion, if I can put it that way, about Lord Rennard, you're certainly not helping recruit young women to the Liberal Democrat Party. Why is that apology from Lord Rennard not enough for you?
Well, I said on a personal level I welcome it, but as actually we still have complaints which still need to be investigated. The party to date has still not actually properly investigated our complaints, and I think that it was as a minimum expectation of an organisation they should. I think they have a duty of care to do so. But the wider point about whether this should be putting off people, I actually reject the notion that when we see a problem in the number of women getting involved in politics, we blame the women, and we blame them for being put off, or we blame them for not being confident enough, or not having enough media training, or not being given enough opportunities. I think we should start blaming the culture a bit more.
Well, what should Nick Clegg be doing about this that he hasn't already done or said?
Well, I think that we have to expect from our leaders a level of sort of moral leadership and vision to say that the parties should live the values that it espouses, and equality and the role of women inside society is something which I know many Liberal Democrats hold very dear. And so I think it's a very simple question. Do we have somebody like Chris Rennard with what even the limits of what he's acknowledged, is that still acceptable for him to remain a voice in public life?
Would you be concerned, Miranda, that this is really going to put women off voting for the Liberal Democrats?
It may do if it carries on, I think. I'm much more worried, to be honest, Jane, about the general problem of women and politics, because I think that whereas things are changing quite quickly, there's a really excellent sort of marzipan layer, as the management people call it.
What does that mean?
Not at the very top of the political parties, but just below, and with the potential to lead in all three main parties now. I think that's enormous progress in the time that I've been involved in.
Who's the leading Liberal Democrat woman then who could take charge?
Well, there's a very good woman in Wales who's the leader of the Welsh Party, Kirsty Williams, and she's spoken of as a potential future leader.
Would you echo that, Bridget?
Yeah, absolutely. Kirsty's a fabulous politician. We also have exceptionally good council leaders like Dorothy Thornhill in Watford, Sue Derbyshire in Stockport, and many others, actually, sadly, some of whom have just recently lost their seats. But they have done, I mean, in local government, 25% of group leaders for the Lib Dems are women, and actually local government and local campaigners recognise and openly encourage young women and many women leaders. So I don't think the picture is as bad as it seems.
And I think it's really crucial to understand that the culture of politics that Bridget was talking about isn't going to change properly unless we get much better gender balance and unless we get enough powerful women at the top of the organisation.
You could say the same for all the main political parties, couldn't you?
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. Although obviously Labour has been much better because of their policy in '97 to have all female shortlists. So you get this sudden influx of women, and it does change the culture overnight. I mean, I was working in the Commons at that time, and you could feel the difference when all those women came in, and I think the Lib Dems should think about doing something similar now.
Very, very briefly, Bridget.
Well, I'd just like to make the wider point is the culture in Westminster, and I think we should be arguing for a zero tolerance of any inappropriate behaviour, and that doesn't just include harassment, but it's also racism and inappropriate behaviour on every level, and we should actually have a zero tolerance and not just say that mild harassment is a bit acceptable. We should say none of it's acceptable.
Bridget, thank you very much. Miranda Green, thank you very much for coming in today. Any thoughts on that, you can contact us, of course, via the website or on Twitter at BBC Woman's Hour.